Good afternoon and welcome, as I mentioned, to our webinar, Get the Odds Tech Stacked in Your Favor. Today, we're talking about how your firm can maximize growth and minimize fraud in an environment of shrinking margins and growing compliance concerns. We're joined today by Anura CEO and co-founder Rich Kahn, Lindsay Friedlander, account executive from Everflow, and VP of Media Intelligence from Excel, Mark Romero. Thank you all for joining us today. Quick introduction of our panelists. For over 3 decades, Rich Kahn has been at the vanguard of digital marketing. He has spent most of his career leading the fight against the ever-growing $100 billion ad fraud problem. He continues that fight today as CEO and co-founder of Anura. Thanks for providing the platform for this webinar, Rich.
No problem.
Today, Rich is joined by 2 panelists, Lindsay Friedlander and Mark Romero. Lindsay is an account executive at Everflow, working with prospective clients in solving for their tracking attribution needs. With over 20 years of experience, Lindsay has specialized in client services leadership roles and performance marketing strategies in print, pay-per-call, and digital advertising from both an agency and partner perspective. She has worked with top 500 brands, primarily in the direct-to-consumer verticals, such as home services, insurance, and finance. Thank you for joining us today, Lindsay.
Thank you very much for having me too. Looking forward to our conversation.
And of course, Mark is VP of Media Intelligence at Excel. His knowledge spans many aspects of digital marketing with a focus on strategic partnerships, data-driven media purchasing, and creative asset iteration. Mark sets creative strategy for campaigns with multi-million-dollar budgets and works directly with partners to maintain compliance and quality while scaling traffic volume. Thanks for joining us today, Mark.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So we'd love to hear from our attendees throughout this conversation. We've opened the Q&A section of the webinar. Please drop any questions you may have for any of our panelists. And as always, we will provide a recording of this webinar to all the registrants within the next few days. So let's start today's conversation with a question related to some of the recent news around lead generation and TCPA regulations. Can each of you talk about how your firms help clients with their customer acquisition goals and how you help ensure that they are scalable and compliant? And maybe, Rich, you can start us off with how Anura helps clients and strategic partners in the lead gen space.
Well, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's that, compliance is super important. And also, consumer experience on a lot of these websites is important. You end up having a problem where, again, the rules that are out there now try to prevent people from, filling out a form to save money in your car insurance and getting 100 calls that day. That's the biggest problem. But what the area that we help with is that we identified right now 1 in 4 leads that are being filled out by somebody else on behalf of somebody else without their knowledge. So in other words, let's say, James, somebody comes along and puts your information into save money on car insurance. Next thing you know, out of the blue, you didn't put the request in, you're getting tons of calls. Every one of those calls is a violation of TCPA. So our job is to make sure the people that are filling out those forms are actually the right people, at least a genuine person behind the keyboard. There's lots of technology out there to help with all kinds of compliance and stuff like that. Our job is to focus on the visitor first, make sure it's the right person that's about to fill out a form. It's not a bot. It's not malware that's interfering with it. Or more importantly, it's not human flood farms from around the globe that are doing that on purpose to game the system.
And Lindsay, what kind of solutions does Everflow provide that helps the clients scale while also maintaining that compliance?
Yeah, well, as a tracking and attribution platform, Everflow, we don't really directly collect any personal information from the consumer, but rather we have integrations in place with companies like Anura or other lead management solutions that can help amplify their anti-fraud and compliance strategies. So instead, what our platform does is we help clients be able to more efficiently save resources and time through automating frequent fraud and compliance tasks like detecting fraudulent traffic, receiving notifications if potential fraud is happening, and automatically block fraudulent sources. So we have a lot of also reporting and analytics tools that help our clients spot potential fraud faster, which I can share a little bit later during this webinar on what some of those specifics are. So essentially, our platform takes a lot of the routine, daily, and compliance and fraud prevention tasks off our clients' plates so that they can focus on scaling their program with existing partners that are proving to drive the right type of traffic. And then also feeling more comfortable with unlocking underutilized and inexpensive sources because they now have systems in place to be able to, tap into that types of resources to help them scale.
Awesome. And Mark, Excel works with clients in a highly regulated space, mostly insurance, I assume, right? And what sort of issues do you help those clients solve? And how do you guys stay ahead of changes in regulation?
I think that for most of our clients, the big thing is obviously just consumer acquisition at scale in general. And the thing that we provide most of all is security and a level of trust in the customers that we're acquiring. And part of that is through the tech solutions like Anura that we utilize to make sure that we're not sending any sort of fraudulent traffic to our partners. But the other hand, it's also about the way that we do our marketing and the perception of how we do our marketing to our clients. I think when you're in a regulated industry like we are, it's important that you develop a good relationship of trust and you have really open communication with the partners that you're working with. Marketers have a tendency to push the boundaries a little bit, and it can cause problems potentially. So I think that, making partners feel that you're not going to mislead the consumer or deliver a consumer experience that's negative, as Rich was saying, like, you don't expect the 20 calls on that auto insurance form you're filling out. And a happy consumer is not going to complain. It's not going to generate a compliance problem down the line. And, staying ahead of shifting regulations, if you're doing right by the consumers, I feel like 9 times out of 10, you're not going to have any problems with regulations changing down the road.
I agree with that. Like I said, the whole point of the whole reason why the government's stepping in is because consumers are complaining. They're upset. You get to a point where, let's face it, how many of us get phone calls on our cell phones right now that we don't answer because they're spam or we don't recognize a number? But imagine if your phone blew up 100 times a day. How many days would that take before you picked up the phone and called somebody and said, this has got to stop. I can't even use my phone anymore. So I think you're 100% right. If you're focusing 100% on keeping those consumers happy, which is the goal because you want them to turn them into buyers later on, then I think most of the regulations follow suit with doing just that.
I like to follow the grandma rule when it comes to marketing. And what that is for me is I don't want to send any consumer down a experience that I wouldn't want my grandmother to experience. So if grandma is happy, then I think the consumer experience in general is going to be positive.
That's a great insight right there. That's a good rule to follow.
Can we take a step back and just talk about how you guys all work together? I know I believe there's a strategic partnership between Anura and Everflow, and Excel is an Everflow client. Am I interpreting that correctly? So can you guys kind of talk about how you work together and how your products maybe work together?
Who wants to start?
I can start. It's easier for me because I work with both Anura and Everflow, and the platforms connect together. We primarily use Everflow for managing affiliate partners, and for Anura, we primarily use it, like I said earlier, to track fraud, both coming from affiliate sources and from our own internal media sources. And both are very important for us in terms of scaling, because you never want to scale something that's highly fraudulent. It's just bad for everybody involved.
Easy to scale fraudulent activity because there's plenty of it out there. But of course, the clients at the end of the day are not happy. So yeah, we work with everybody here. So Everflow, we have a strategic partnership with. We have a specialized integration with them. So like I said, they have clients that have fraudulent, have traffic coming through, and they have fraudulent need for fraudulent software to get the fraudulent activity off their network. So we did a deal 4 or 5 years ago. We got the integration done, and we did some initial marketing behind it. And a lot of times we'll get people that or with Everflow, and they'll ask Everflow, okay, how do I handle fraud? What do you guys have to handle fraud? And they'll send them our way. And a lot of times we'll be able to. The nice thing is if we have a client that's using Everflow, it's a little checkbox, a couple little settings. It literally there's no tech lift because that's our biggest concern when we bring on a new client is what's the tech lift? Especially in Q4, techs are backed up. They have a date where they can't roll out any new code because they don't want anything rolling out during the holidays and all this other stuff. So the nice thing is if they're an Everflow client already, the manager can do a checkbox and be up and running in no time, less than 60 seconds. So the tech lift is just not there. Now, if they're going to be doing stuff, they want to get really more advanced with what they're doing with some of our technology, then there's a little bit more of a tech lift. But the nice thing is they can get started right away without any tech resources at all. So that's why we have the relationship with Everflow. And we get clients all the time that ask us, hey, I need an affiliate management system. Who do you recommend? So having that relationship, we have somebody that we can trust that's going to take care of them. They have great industry reputation. So it's very easy to turn around and say, here, use this company, because we know that if we send them there and they're happy, and if they're not already using us, that they're going to turn around and send them right back to us too. So, and like I said, a Mark we've been working with a couple of years. Same thing, helping them. If I remember correctly, they were looking for a fraud solution for a while, and they did a lot of due diligence, put us to the ringer, make sure that our data was accurate, because that's one of the biggest problems in the space, and thankfully chose us to be their solution. And the fact that we were tied into Everflow made it, I think, tip the scales in our favor, because it just made it a lot easier for them to already plug it into something they're already using.
Yeah. And that's our goal, is to work with smart tech companies like Anura, so that when we have clients that are looking to add on to their tech and make sure that they're protected or have the right solutions in place, we are experts in the tracking and attribution. We have great tools to help fight off some fraud, but partnering with companies like Anura to make it easy for our clients to have that integration in place is our goal. So, if they're happy, then everybody's happy. So it just works out perfectly.
So, Rich, can you expound a little bit? I know in the beginning, in the introduction, we talk about that $100 billion ad fraud problem, which is a number that it continues to grow as more is uncovered and detected. Can you talk a little bit about that problem, how it's growing, and what you guys are doing to kind of scale and manage that so that your clients ultimately can protect their budgets and adapt to compliance updates?
Sure. Just to give everybody an understanding of what's been going on, mid 2000, let's call it like 2012, 13, 14, they started, different reports and different measurement companies started tracking, how big of a fraud problem exists. And for the first couple of years, based on the analytics and the data they were collecting, they were seeing a $5 to $6 billion a year problem, which is a big problem. And then all of a sudden it started spiking up. I think it was 2018, 19. It went from, 5 or 6 billion to 10 billion, 18 billion, 40 billion. And then it just been growing exponentially to last year. As a global society, we've tipped over $500 billion in digital marketing sales worldwide. And fraud is estimated to be over 100 billion for last year, based on the detection and the statistics that they're using to track all that. And best guesses right now is that's supposed to double in the next 5 years. So this is growing exponentially, especially with the introduction of tools like Fraud GPT, writing a bot that does this, So now you can have AI writing, bots to go out and do your dirty work. You don't even have to be a technical programmer to run them. Maybe be technical, integrate them and run them, but you don't have to write them yourself. I mean, there's stuff out there, but you got AI and even machine learning's been out there for a while. All this stuff is going to make it increasingly more difficult for somebody to look at it. The nice thing with us is that we have access. So when I talk to companies, for example, that are trying to do something themselves internally, first off, they got to spend a lot of resources and development time to build it, and a lot of resources and time to maintain it, because just for us alone, we're catching 2 to 3 new threats a week. That's how fast it's evolving. And the nice thing that we have access to is we have access to a huge amount of data. So we have hundreds of clients of data that's going through our system that our machine learning is learning from and identifying and pinpointing new threats in real time for us. So that gives us the edge. We're able to stay ahead of it, so that when a small amount of traffic starts coming into the network that has a potential problem or a fraud signature, it immediately goes to the team so they can analyze it, identify it, either understand what it is, and then upgrade our system to maintain that. And like I said, we're probably making two to three changes a week to the algorithms, whether it's writing a whole new algorithm, whether it's adding to something, updating something. Every time a new browser comes out, a new device comes out, there's new holes, there's new stuff that was closed up. So you've got to constantly be on top of all that stuff. So again, this is what our team does. We do it less than if somebody hired one person on their team to do it themselves. So we're a very cost-effective solution, but access to the data that they need. Like I said, we've been studying the data trends for the last 18 years. So it's trillions upon trillions of visitor data that we've been collecting and dealing with in order to get our system to a point where it is today.
And I think what you said, sorry to cut you off, James, but it's so crazy the amount that AI has suddenly been integrated into most aspects of our businesses. Most recently, the advent of ChatGPT and its accessibility to anybody, and the ease of coding new GPTs now just adds so many additional threats that need to be taken care of and monitored consistently. It's so great that you're able to kind of keep up with it, because now anybody can do it, right? It's so easy nowadays.
It's been estimated that the average fraudster earns $5 million a year. So,
Wow.
Who doesn't want in on that? Again, if your moral compass doesn't point north, that's not something I could ever do. I'd be dangerous if I did, because I know all the tricks in the trade. For me, it's all about helping people to solve that problem and to put an end to that. And it's a very rewarding career for us, because it's great when we sit down with a client and they're like, I've been working with this particular source for so many years. They're really good source. And, we go out to dinner all the time, but you're catching a lot of their traffic to be fraud. Can you show me more? And then we go off the dashboard and we go really into the weeds without giving up secret sauce, but we try to explain to them so that they feel comfortable beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's definitely fraud. And then when they see it and they understand, it's like the light goes off. It's like, oh my God, this has been going on for all this time. I've got to put an end to it. How do we do that? And then we come up with a game plan to solve that. So it's always really rewarding to get customers at that stage. We get customers that come to us all the time that we saved their business. They were getting ready to shut down because, they kept losing client after client. They didn't know when it was going to stop. So when you're able to walk in and help companies do that, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's great. Lindsay, can you talk a little bit about how Everflow works with clients to manage lead gen funnels and to that same kind of topic, mitigate fraud, but also drive revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned previously, we provide a variety of tools and automations to really help our clients create that proactive defense instead of waiting and being reactive for something to happen. So, a lot of the examples that we have in place, we don't have time to go over all of them, but, some of the examples are, blocking proxy traffic that has a high propensity of being fraudulent, and the ability to avoid duplicate clicks. And then our clients have robust reporting at their hands too, to be able to quickly identify bad behavior. So some of those reports are like a placement ad report, which allows you to drill down to a specific ad and traffic placement. So not just at that publisher level, but really drill down to what they're doing to see if they're meeting the KPIs or not, or if there's something fishy going on. And then we have also a really unique fraud prevention report called our click to conversion time report. So what this does is it allows you to see the amount of time it takes for a click to turn into a conversion. So whatever that conversion is, whether it's a sale or a lead form, so that you can easily identify if bad behavior is occurring and then block it. So for instance, if you know that it takes a consumer a minute to fill out a form and you're seeing a lot of clicks that are resulting in forms being filled out in 30 seconds, then you can start taking immediate action, because you can easily see that in our reports. And then we have automations in place around those reports, so that if you set certain conditions, whether they're, the types of traffics that are like on the offer or multiple offers or traffic sources, and if they are not meeting those certain conditions, then you can select what you want to do and based on your business model and how you want to manage your campaign. So do you want to be automatically notified, or do you want that traffic to be automatically blocked so that it gives your team time to check into it. So there's a lot of ways to automate that processes, so then your team can really focus on managing and those campaigns and those growing initiatives. And it saves a lot of money also, just because you notice that there's a reduction in your budget's going to that fraudulent traffic. It's actually going to traffic that's actually going to result in sales.
And Mark, can you talk a little bit about how Excel helps with affiliate marketing sources, using those to drive new business, and then some of the best practices for sort of managing those relationships?
Yeah, I think that's in terms of best practices for managing affiliate marketing companies and things like that. The number one thing is to treat them like an extension of your internal team. And I think in the affiliate space, there's a lot of just general mistrust because the potential amount of fraud that there's out there. There's so much money changing hands, and it's so easy to, start down a bad path if you're not monitoring everything carefully. And I think 9 times out of 10, the affiliates that you work with, they are pushing the boundaries for you. They're pushing the envelope. Sorry. And, they're going to be experimenting with traffic sources that maybe nobody else will. Maybe nobody on your internal media team would maybe give the time of day. And I think that commitment on their side has to be respected. And you can't have a great affiliate program if you're unwilling to share your data with the affiliates, for better or for worse. And, to piggyback on what Rich said a little bit earlier, is that sometimes it's just about sitting someone down and being like, hey, this is the fraud that we're seeing. This is why we know it's fraud. Let's work together on fixing it. And on the flip side of that coin, this is what's working really well. How can we get more of this? What can we do to improve? And I think too many companies nowadays are hesitant to do that. But I think it's so important to building a good affiliate program.
And in terms of technology partnerships, and this guy, I guess, any of you guys could answer this one. What criteria do you feel businesses should be considering when they're selecting new technology partners in relation to their 2024 goals, for instance? What kind of things are important, do you feel, for people to look at? Maybe, Lindsay, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I can start off with that one. There's a lot of tech companies out there that claim to offer similar services regardless of whatever niche you're in. So it's really hard to really find that tech partner that truly shines and fits within your own business model. So when thinking about this, I have 3 different simple criterias that I like to share. The first one is, just when you're starting the evaluation process, is just have a clear wish list of items that are important, not only to the company, but to the team that's actually going to be doing the day-to-day activities as well, because they're the ones that are going to be in there day and night, and they may have certain things that they feel are really important to them that you may have overlooked. So that way, when you're talking to these tech companies and going through your vetting process, you're making sure that they have the capabilities that fits with everybody's needs, not just the overall company. And then I said, secondly, leverage your network for the feedback, which companies to reach out to or potentially stay away from. Use your network, and that word of mouth. It's just so powerful, and oftentimes is overlooked as a valuable resource. So when companies, they all can look great on paper, but why not pulse your friends within the industry? They've already gone through the trenches of finding that right partner and seeing just really, who they recommend, who's demonstrating good ethical and business practices like we've been talking about already, and then have that strong offering that aligns with what everybody is looking for. And then the third criteria is take your time. Just make sure that when you're talking to companies that they want to start using the platform, just make sure you have your ducks in a row. Make sure you have that wish list. Make sure that you're just not rushing through it, because when you rush through things, you're going to overlook important aspects of what you need to consider when looking at a tech stack. So just have that clear understanding of what your marketing initiatives are, and doing your due diligence is just very important. So that way you don't have to repeat the step and go back to square one 6 months down the road.
And I know, Rich, I know you guys carry a couple of different industry certifications. How important do you think that is when people are looking at technology providers?
Well, it depends on the technology provider, right? It depends on the software that you're offering. Um, and like we live in a society right now where when you buy a piece of software, let's say if you're buying a spreadsheet program, right? There's a couple different main options. Obviously, there's 2 or 3 major ones that are out there. But I always ask people, when you sit there and you're evaluating upgrading your spreadsheets to something, do you ever check that they're right in their calculations? No. You just assume if you put all this data together, it's going to spit out the right calculations. But if you're using that data and making, business, changing decisions on it, wouldn't that be something important to make sure it does the right thing? So most software, when you buy software, they'll sell you on the fact it's going to do X, Y, and Z, and generally they do. In our space, the fraud detection space, that's not necessarily the case. So because I've heard this a lot of times from prospective customers, like, well, I'm debating going with this company because you guys all do the same thing, and that's not the truth. The biggest problem in the space is how accurate the solution may be, and there's some basic industry standards that should be followed so that you can be certified, you can actually be doing what they consider best case scenario. So I'll give you an example. About 12 years ago, I think it was, the MRC, which is the Media Rating Council, worked hand in hand with the IAB, which is the Internet Advertising Bureau, to come up with a set of standards because there were fraud solutions coming out that were actually hurting customers versus helping them. Because it was just, hey, it's a quick model. Everybody's talking about fraud. Let's throw something together that's real dirty and cheap, and let's just sell the hell out of it. And there are companies to this day still doing that. They'll lie, cheat, and steal there to get business in the door. And if the client doesn't actually check to make sure that the data is accurate, they're going to be making decisions that's going to ultimately hurt their business. So for us, at minimum, we wanted to get what's called, there's an MRC standard that they created back, I think it was 2012, 2011, something like that. And it's a long document of all the things that you should be doing at bare bones minimum to meet industry standards for fraud detection. And it's specifically written for fraud detection. And there's 2 organizations that do the certification for that. MRC does a certification. And then TAG, which is the Trustworthy and Accountability Group, they also do a certification. And what happens is you decide which company you're going to go with, then you hire a third-party auditor to come in. It takes about a quarter to get through, and they'll audit everything that you do from code to databases to process procedures and logic. I mean, they really look up the skirt and look for everything. They're just trying to find what's going on and do you meet these standards? And you have to prove that the standards are being met. And if you get through the certification, then they'll give you the stamp of approval that, okay, you are now officially following standards. MRC calls it accredited and TAG calls it certified against fraud. So you won one of those things. And what's interesting, and you would think any fraud solution worth their weight out there would run out and get these. They're not that expensive. MRC is expensive. But TAG actually is a global entity that we do a lot of business globally. So we want to go with a global entity and we went that route. And they're not that expensive to get the certification. And they all use the same document for certification. So which is kind of interesting. And there are probably over 100 companies out in the marketplace that do some type of fraud detection. There's only 8 that are certified to follow those standards. So what we found, it was important that when we're talking to companies, like we're talking about compliance, we're talking about all these things. There's an organization out there called Reach that's putting standards out for lead generation to make sure it's following the laws that are being set in order to be doing business correctly. And part of those standards are to have a fraud detection system that is certified by either the MRC or TAG. Because they want to make sure if you're supposed to follow standards, then if there are any technology stacks below it that have a set of standards, they too should be following their own standards. So for us, it was important to run out and get those. We also got SOC 2 compliant because we had some clients asking for it. And it's like, okay, if somebody needs it, let's run out and get it. So we went ahead and 6 months of process to go through and get that all done and wrapped up and done. And it's something you got to do every year. But I think that sets, obviously if there's only 8 out of over 100 of us that have it done, it does set us apart from everybody else that's in the market that's just whipping together these cheap solutions and trying to pass them off as good solutions. So it's interesting. And like when a client is looking and vetting us out, kind of like Mark did. They are looking at multiple solutions because they don't want to just believe the hype that's in the market. They want to they want to talk to people that they know that have used different solutions, because the recommendations go a long way. If somebody else has been using a solution for a couple of years and is happy, that obviously carries a lot of weight. But at the end of the day, the client should be testing the software. So you're going to put a new tech stack in front that's going to make business decisions for you. Because again, a lot of our clients use our stuff in real time to be a visitor firewall, blocking fraudulent and not blocking real people. You want to know for yourself that you trust the software, that you've ran it through your own test. So we tell everybody, run it through the test. If you pick 2 or 3 people that you kind of like for whatever reason, based on recommendations, whatever, run all 3 of them through a test and see which ones you find are the most accurate and going to solve your problem. Because the worst thing I've seen is I've seen companies deploy technology that's supposed to be a fraud detection solution and watched everything tank. And they don't know why. But they didn't do any testing.
Yeah.
I wanted to note regarding like the research and just the certifications in general, like certain companies, especially large corporate companies that we partner with, some of the largest insurance carriers in the country, like they do audits of our websites and they want to know what's on the website. And they do their evaluation based on the certifications for the software that we utilize on our website. So working with a company that has a SOC 2 compliance is important because our partners want to know, and they do check.
So
do that compliance all the time.
Yeah, Mark, other than the grandma rule, are there criteria that you look for when you're looking at technology partners outside of certification? Are there other things that you think are important to look at?
I think in terms of like what we look at for technology partners is sort of the speed at which they can maneuver. We deal a lot with really changing regulatory environments, and we need to make sure that the partners that we work with are keeping up to date and are making solutions to the challenges that come up every day. I don't think that there's a necessarily rule that is easy to follow regarding how you do this, but Lindsay mentioned, discuss with the peers in your industry, follow up and determine who are the best players, who are the fastest players, who are the ones that communicate the best. It's so important to make sure that you're not attaching your carriage to a horse that's going to be walking very slowly, especially if you need to make a change right now. And the rules come in faster than you would expect.
Yeah. We did get one question from the audience about managing cancellation rates, which I know is can be directly related to the quality of the leads that you're getting in. So the question specifically was, what are your thoughts about managing cancellation rates? And is it better to make a cancellation procedure simple or use a call center or AI cancellation method? Do you guys have any thoughts, feelings around that?
Mark, is that in your wheelhouse?
I think it's probably more in your wheelhouse.
I think it really depends on the type of cancellation we're talking about. Oh, the question disappeared.
Yes, I think I'm guessing it's about policy cancellations, which I assume affects attrition rate for your clients on the insurance side. So, and also is related to lead quality. So, any thoughts on the simplicity or using AI or a call center for that sort of stuff?
So I can't speak too much to the best process for cancellations when the policy is already in place. And I think all of the insurance carriers and agencies have their own set of rules that they use for it, and nothing's necessarily the same. For me and for our company, our goal is that never happens in the first place. We don't want to send insurance carrier and agency a lead that has the potential to be fraud, which is why all of our fraud solutions and the way that we work with Anura all happens on the front end. We try not to even get to that point. So I don't want to necessarily speculate on what to do when the traffic has gone that far. We haven't had that problem yet. And I'm glad that we haven't had that problem yet. And I hope that we continue to not having that problem. So
there's definitely a balance there that you have to strike between aggressive growth goals and ensuring that there's quality and compliance on the lead. So, how do you help insurance clients kind of manage that, push and pull between volume and quality?
I think, this is, again, it really varies depending on each partner, because everyone's going to have their own different sets of risk tolerances. I think one of the important things to do for people in our space is really be honest with yourself about how you audit, and audit the people that you're working with, and audit your own internal processes. The large insurance agencies, like, they have requirements that you need to meet in order to work with them. And the trust that you build with them is really highly dependent on, when there's not a problem, your speed and accuracy in answering questions when they do an audit, and making sure that your team has a full understanding of what's going on behind the scenes and good understanding of the data that you're utilizing. So I think that's probably the most important thing in general, like building that level of trust and understanding that, like, they know and are comfortable with the fact that you're on the ball, basically.
Lindsay, can we talk a little bit about the way Everflow kind of helps firms leverage, your proprietary technology, and how that can enhance the effectiveness of affiliate marketing campaigns and just their overall success and customer acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. We see this every day when we talk to companies that are struggling to manage their affiliate program, or have put it off because they don't have the dedicated resources. They have something that maybe they built internally, but it's not as robust as they would like it because of resources, or they have a limited platform. So once we see the clients start using techs like Everflow or Anura, they just really do breathe a sigh of relief, which really sounds cheesy, but it's true, because they see the ease of use, the reliability, which is huge, and what we've talked about before already, the automations that are in place to help them with their day-to-day activities, and then the reporting capabilities. So talking a little bit about, what Mark was talking about with the cancellation rates and stuff, like, that's something that our platform can help monitor cancellation rates through what we call events. So if you can set it up where if that cancellation comes through on a click that's from a program, you can have that be part of your reporting, so that if you see a partner that is starting to drive higher than normal cancellation rates, then you can easily see that, and then take action through our automations and reporting and so forth. So having all of that connected together it's been really easy for our clients to really adapt and be able to help them to more effectively manage their programs.
And Rich, I know in the beginning we talked a little bit about TCPA, and those are obviously things that you can sort of see heading your way that might be threats, concerns, something that could impact your client's business. What other things does Anura do to kind of make sure you guys stay ahead of the curve on emerging threats, specifically in fraud prevention?
For us, it's really the data. Over the last 18 years, we've been collecting just an enormous amount of data, and then we built a machine learning model to constantly scrape all that data and look at it in a variety of ways. And that gets upgraded from time to time. It's just new data that comes through that we can look at in different ways. And it really, what it's looking for is anomalies. The way we built our system, it's pretty straightforward. It identifies anomalies that are then flagged to the engineering team. We don't trust AI or machine learning to make those decisions for us on most of our stuff. We do have some machine learning algorithms that update themselves in real time, based on a set of defined rules. We're not going to make it, really think much, but when we see certain things that have been happening over and over again, then it can learn on its own, and we can improve that. And those updates are going out every minute. So every time a new threat starts popping up that hits certain thresholds that need to be addressed, it instantly rolls out through the entire cluster. Everybody's protected by it, and that's been going on those self-learning rules, we call them, have been going on probably for the last 12, 15 years. They work great. They take a lot of time off of our engineering team, which is awesome. But the machine learning, every time it flags something different, which is, probably half a dozen times a week, that's something that we need to look at and investigate and then make a decision, either train the machine learning that this is fine, this is just the way the new browser works, or this is just something different, or no, this is a threat we need to identify. And the nice thing, like I said, is with the hundreds of millions of people that we see every single day, if we just get a handful of requests that don't look right, we can start mitigating it before it becomes a wide-scale problem, before anybody notices anything really happening. So unfortunately, you can't predict what fraudsters are going to do. We've kind of done that already. Like we have one of our guys is an ultimate hacker and just knows everything that we're looking for and tries to hack our network on a regular basis. Like that's one of the many tasks that they have, and his job is to really focus and try to hack it, and knowing everything we look for. And when he finds a way around it, then we solve for it. But again, it's one individual, and then the team that's solving the problem puts that stuff together. But when you're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of hackers out there, they all think differently. So for us, to stay ahead of it, we just have to have them find a loophole, break something. This is all they're doing. They're trying to get around these systems, because the easy way to look at it is we created a video not too long ago, well, actually a couple of years ago, and it was based on a conversation I had with a client. And I said, where are you buying your traffic from? And they said, I'm buying it from XYZ company. And I said, okay. And how do you eliminate fraud? Well, I use ABC company to defend fraud, and so does the company I'm buying from. And yet I still see fraud in my network. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And I explained to him what's going on is that the fraudster knows what ABC does. The fraudster knows you're looking at so you're looking at the traffic with the same colored glasses, and they're just doing stuff to bypass it. So the data is going to always tell you more than anything else. So for us, we took that lesson and learned, okay, let's focus on the data. Like, we'll try to figure out what they're going to think of next, or how this new tool or how AI is going to be able to break it. Or like I said, Fraud GPT comes out. So we'll write a couple scripts with it and see what it's doing, just to make sure we're looking at all the technology that's available to everybody. But again, we'll let the data speak for itself. So the data has always been our best point of contention to find the new threats.
Yeah, so I think obviously artificial intelligence has been a thing, especially since ChatGPT reared its ugly head. That is something businesses are thinking about and trying to understand how to integrate. And it sounds like, Rich, you're developing ways to try and make sure you can fight against fraud created in that environment. Mark or Lindsay, do you guys want to talk a little bit about what your firms might be doing to either embrace or possibly protect against the rise of artificial intelligence?
I mean, I could speak a little bit about it. I think it's just finding the ways to embrace it and how it can help move your company forward and advance in the positive ways. And then in terms of just, having those protections in place, like Rich talked about, and, being open to continuously evolving as the industry evolves, and performance marketing and affiliate marketing, and it's always changing. So just having a company that is evolving along with it and is open to testing and open to making sure that they have processes in place or taking that into consideration for their future growth and so forth. I think that's just really important to have that forward thinking approach.
I think for us, we are partially relying on solutions like Anura and Everflow to help us stay ahead of the game when it comes to fraud prevention coming from like AI. Beyond the solutions themselves, it's important for us to keep track of like all of the data analytics that we collect on our websites, and we collect as much information as we possibly can. And, having our team go through and review and monitor. Beyond that, I don't think that there's too much you can do. It's really important to make sure that you're looking at the data that's at your fingertips consistently. And you're playing good offense and defense in the regards that, like, you have the right alerts set up so that when something does happen, you can nip it in the bud almost immediately. And when you find patterns of things that are going well, you have the ability to scale them.
Sense. And we're coming up on just about 10 minutes before the hour, so we can probably wrap up today's conversation. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you to Rich, Lindsay, and Mark for this timely and helpful conversation. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to provide a recording of this session to all the attendees, and certainly we'd love any feedback. If you want to fill out the quick survey as you exit, it would be most appreciated. And if you'd like further information on the services provided by Anura, you can find Rich Kahn at anura.io. You can learn more about Everflow at everflow.io, and you can find Excel at excelimpact.com.
Enjoy the holidays.
Yes. Happy holidays to everyone. Thank you all for joining us, and hope to see you on future webinars.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.